Welcome to the Biotech Startups podcast by Exceeder. Join us as we speak with first-time founders, serial entrepreneurs, and experienced investors about the challenges and triumphs of running a biotech startup, from pre-seed to IPO, with your host, John Chou. Our guest today is Judy Chou, President and CEO of Chou Bio, a clinical stage biotechnology company developing novel therapeutics for immunological and inflammatory diseases. At Chou Bio, Dr. Chou leads the development of PSG1 immune checkpoint agonists, a first-in-class mechanism targeting chronically activated T cells in autoimmune diseases, with the mission of fundamentally resetting immune homeostasis rather than simply suppressing symptoms. Before founding Chou Bio, Dr. Chou served as Global Head of Biotech and Senior Vice President at Bayer Pharmaceuticals, where she oversaw a $3 billion plus product portfolio and led over 2,000 employees across 6 sites. Under her leadership, Bayer launched products including GV and Eylea, and transformed from traditional biologics to advanced therapies, including cell and gene therapies. Dr. Chou has spent over 25 years in drug development and biomanufacturing at Genentech, Pfizer, Medivation, and AbbVie, where she became broadly recognized for breakthrough technologies in high-throughput screening and accelerated product development. With a PhD from Yale University, postdoctoral training at the Max Planck Institute, and a faculty position at Harvard Medical School, Dr. Chou's journey from big pharma executive to startup CEO demonstrates how deep scientific expertise and bold leadership can drive innovation in autoimmune disease treatment, making this a conversation you won't want to miss. Over the next 4 episodes, Dr. Chou shares how her upbringing in Taiwan, an uncle's challenge about unsolved problems in biology, and a heartbreaking encounter with a young boy losing his mother to leukemia carried her from medical school through Yale and Harvard to building some of the most successful biologic drugs in the industry. She reflects on lessons from pioneering high-throughput screening methods that changed biomanufacturing, building Genentech's Oceanside product-driven department, navigating Medivation's $14.3 billion acquisition by Pfizer, and breaking barriers as the first Asian woman to lead Bayer's global biotech organization, where she faced the reality that she filled no traditional categories for leadership. Today, we'll hear about Dr. Chou's early days in Taiwan, the influence of her professor parents, and how a conservative environment sparked an inner rebel who could meet expectations while imagining doing things entirely differently. We'll also hear how physics led her to medical school, shadowing a pioneering oncologist, and the longest walk of her life, from an emergency room back to the lab, that convinced her that she needed to find solutions, not just treat one patient at a time. Lastly, we'll hear about earning 5 honors in her first semester at Yale by taking 5 courses simultaneously, and how her professor moving mid-PhD turned into a home alone experience that taught her independence. Without further ado, let's dive into part 1 of our conversation with Judy Chou.
Judy, so good to see you again. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I know it's been a long time coming, and I've been really looking forward to this conversation. When we were doing our homework and just kind of like creating the prep sheet for you, we were just like wanting to go all the way back and just like learn about what really kind of got you into science and business, and kind of what was your upbringing like to, kind of learn about, what has influenced your leadership style and business philosophy. So take us all the way back. What was growing up like at home as a kid? Tell us about that experience.
I was born and raised in Taiwan, and this was back to quite a while ago. And I think the key things, if I'm thinking about, there are 2 things. One, growing in Taiwan, I think even nowadays also, not getting to the politics, but definitely it's environment about you always know there's some threats or in using my word, I will feel like you're living in an environment you always feel like somebody's going to bully you. And so in a sense, like it doesn't make sense and somehow this big power over you and you have to overcome and somehow find your way. I do think that's one thing I wouldn't call it fun, but have that influence in me in a positive way. Meaning, I think I have this tendency, maybe a little bit obnoxious about ignore people being unreasonable around me. Like then you
Yeah.
just have to ignore it, let it go because that's going to be there. So it doesn't bother me in some sense. Sometimes I have to say, myself, my team, my friends will feel like, why are you okay with it? I don't think I'm okay, but I think I know it's going to be there. And I maybe, like I say, it's more about I ignore people, make people feel very annoying more than more than I live with it. So
Yeah.
I think that's one big environment thing, kind of for made me who I am today. Also, second thing is about I was living in the environment at that time was very traditional and conservative. So meaning there's some defined paths and defined things about being good as a kid. Um, and I don't know what happened to me, but I think even when I was young, I am probably one of those most behaved kids. Not like I have any strange thing happen, but inside of my heart, I always having some very creative thought about if I got into my way and I would do things differently. So maybe that's also the whole characteristic about me about I can live with something, but when I get a chance, I'll do something pretty differently.
Yeah.
And so I do think like if I were thinking about my childhood, it's this two big environment thing, and also in that kind of like a mix with this traditional, trying to break the tradition things all going around, and that that has a profound impact. And I would say it's relatively still fun. Maybe the way I described didn't sound so fun, but that's how I will highlight about my childhood, though.
It sounded like you had like an inner like rebel that like you're just like, I might do
Yeah.
things differently here.
Yeah, I think you point out something that's I hate to admit, and that sounds very scary for people working with me. But I would admit that's true.
Yeah. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think there's a time and place for it. So I feel the same way when I was kind of growing up that I had a decent rebellious streak too. Um
Okay.
but also was like well behaved and like and like I was focus on academics and everything like that. But I had a bit of a rebellious streak too. I think you know that kind of characteristic, certainly when it comes to entrepreneurship, it almost feels like a prerequisite. You kind of have to kind of like buck the norm. So I do appreciate that. And so how did when it came to the kind of, you talked about like the conservative tracks that were kind of laid out in front of you, was it a thing where your family was like, look, you got to go be XYZ? What was that track or conservative track?
Many things. I think it's some part, if you start from your question about the family side, definitely there's certain expectation. But I must also give my parents credit about compared to the parents of my friend as I grow up, they are probably much more less traditional one
Oh, cool.
already. Yeah, yeah, seriously, because both my parents I think that has some influence about because both of them actually went to outside of Taiwan for graduate school education. So bring back a lot of different thoughts. Maybe
Cool.
that's how I become so. Anyhow, I think other things also at school because that's why I highlight about that time. From my observation, very different from today's Taiwan's education. So it's this whole obedience about the hierarchy, and it's there. That's how we would define good students at that time. I'm glad it's probably no longer that's the case, but those obedience thing was he me feel like, well, okay, I'll do it, but
Yeah.
I know no, you are not necessarily better or know better than I do or something like that. I know that sounds a little bit scary. That's why I use that word. So looking back, when I share a lot of detailed story about from time to time when I was really was a model student, and I told people about on the stage when I did this, what's in my heart. People are so shocking about, wow, that
Yeah.
sounds very bad. And I say, yeah, that was really what I was thinking. So some part from family, but like I said, I'll give my parents credit. And I do also among my friends, they will recognize, oh, your family is very different. So I couldn't say they are the one or they were the one giving me most of the pressure, but more about that environment.
Interesting. Yeah, my father and mother so they went to school in Malaysia, which had a similar kind of like obedience kind of like you must obey. My dad's actually more rebellious than I am.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Wow.
and he doesn't like talking about it. He doesn't like to talk about how rebellious he was. He's like until like I got much older, he like started to be like, okay, I could tell you exactly the things that I did that probably were no-nos. But when I was a kid, he was just like, oh no, it was perfect. Like, I was, 100%, I don't know, my mom's side, she had, she grew up in Indonesia, but also had family in Taiwan as well, and said similar things. So very interesting. Were your parents also in life sciences, for graduate school or for different graduate studies?
Totally different. So this is probably something interesting. So both my parents are all in non-in science. So my father is an English literature professor,
Cool.
and my mom is a professor in library sciences. So in my whole entire, well, me and my sibling, I'll just say, I'm the only one in science, and
Ah.
I don't know what happens.
Yeah, just
We are from a very artist family. My sister is a musician, and my brother now he's doing a little bit more close to business, but pretty much all those like literature or humanity sciences. So I am the only one in science.
that's very cool. That is a little bit rebellious of you. Like you're just like, you know what? I'm gonna do science. So I like that. I like that.
I don't
Um,
know. I kind of try to defend myself about that's genuine. Somehow I'm interested in science, but
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
That
yeah.
part I don't think in that category. But okay, if you say that, I wouldn't deny either.
It's different. You could say it's
It's
different
different.
at the very least it's different. And so as you are approaching, university, talk a little bit about, where your headspace was, how you chose to go where you go. You went, excuse me, and I know you ultimately chose to go into medicine, but what were there considerations to go to school overseas, like your parents, kind of what were you thinking at that time?
Yeah, so let me still kind of go back a little bit, then I'll get to the college very fast. It's I mentioned, and seriously, also when I was in elementary school, let's put it this way, I was not just interested in arts, but I'm frankly speaking very good, and I kind of consider one of the prodigy in uh, painting, in arts and piano and singing, and also for writing. So maybe I'll turn your question to then how can you go to science, right? I think first was this is also maybe connect to the first question you asked me. I think when I was probably about 12, like in between elementary school to middle school, this is the time somehow I think this whole political environment hit me very, very hard. And I'm thinking about this thing doesn't make sense, one single sense. And I'm starting to be very interested. And I'm serious, really was interest to be a politician. I feel I should be a president of the country.
Interesting.
And I should, that's probably starting turning me my artist gene, like I'm kind of silent that a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit.
silence
Like
the
that.
gene. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
since I'm such a good student in school, maybe I can turn that into. But maybe that turned also very quickly. As I mentioned, somehow I just fall in love with the science about that age, and then I
Was
start
it a
really
class?
want.
Was it a
I
class
think
or a
so,
teacher?
because I think it was a middle school. I starting to expose to physics.
Cool.
And that's sticking me, but I really like physics even up to today. I like this whole concept about to understand the reason of things and also to simplify this whole complicated observation into the single formula. Like, wow, that's just amazing. So I just like it so much. Of course, then I'm very good at it. I think I was that, then starting turn me into science track. And this is a connect to your question, because then unfortunately, I will use the word unfortunately. So in my education back time in high school, so we even need to pass a very stringent entrance exam to get into, like, you have the best and second, third for
Yeah,
high
yeah,
school.
yeah.
So it's very obvious. So I got to the best girls high school, and then in the school, in order to maintain the name being the best high school, then usually they will put us all into different tracks. Of course, then I signed myself into the physics and engineer track because I'm so interested in, I'm also good at it. Um, so the story comes then very, very dramatic term of about then. So even in that track, the student don't study for biology at all because we have to pass a very stringent entrance exam for college. So you just study and being good at it, what you are good at,
Yep.
the entrance exam all about. So I never really studied biology in some sense. So that's probably shocking. So I very specialized in physics, engineering, maths, and everything like that.
Whoa.
That's my mind. And I think still up to date, that background of it. And but the dramatic change is right before the entrance exam. So the exam typical like July, August time in order for the September. I think somewhere in February, March, like the Lunar New Year time when you get together with your family. So I have to give the credit to, I do have a grand uncle. He, at that time, it's already a very famous surgeon, or maybe one of the most successful surgeon in Taiwan. And so he chatted with me about being a doctor and things like that. And somehow he has this vision. He feel like I'm going to be the next Chou family medical doctor. And the way he said it is less about like the typical, as you kind of highlight about some Asian family about, oh, you doctor is so important. He's thinking more about pass along that good name. And then he has this somehow he so it's a big family in my dad's it's child family. So I am a nobody basically, particularly being a girl, I would say, and that's still those old days, right? So I don't know why he kind of like you're going to be the child family in the next
Anointed you.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's very interesting. And then the other person in the family I definitely want to highlight is also roughly at that time. So I have an uncle who is, I mean, now also a very well-known biochemistry professor in Taiwan. So at that time, he's like, he did have this chat with me. He asked me, am I going to be in college? And I say, I'm absolutely going to study physics. And then he asked me this question about, do you think you're smarter than Albert Einstein? Wow. And I couldn't say yes, right? So like, yeah, I'm not quite sure. Then he say, this guy already figured out most of the physics thing. And I mean, my uncle is right. He basically say, but you look at the biology question, how many people have decoded? No. And he say, well, still a lot of groundbreaking. If you feel like you are good in science, do something, make sense, right? So I do want to say, this is probably the first time I elaborate to this degree. So there's two family members in the opposite way made me thinking about, well, is that the case when I'm thinking I'm going to make a huge difference and when I'm so passionate about physics and is that where I have the most impact? My heart is still goes to physics, but I think, well, it probably doesn't hurt. So that was the year, first year. Taiwan in the entrance exam, the college entrance exam, allow people to take one extra exam. For my track, I can just voluntarily, I'm going to take one extra biology, and then I have the choice to choose medical school as one of the choice. And all for the kids in the biology or children in the biology track, if they are willing to take one extra like physics, they can go to other, so that was the first year. They just as a tryout. Later on, trying to break that boundary a little bit. As I think today that's the case. So the natural sciences track allow students to do both. But that was just a groundbreaking the first year. Not many people would do that because you didn't quite prepare for biology. So I was like, oh, well, if both of them say this right, and let me just pick up the biology and study a little bit. And I think probably somehow I always joke about I abnormally did good in that
Yeah, yeah.
exam. So I get into the medical school, and so that's what happened. And if it was not because
Interesting.
they motivate me, I wouldn't have that motivation to do that. But I think interesting to your question about, so I'm always a little bit abnormal in medical school because of that environment, because most of my peers, my friends, they got into medical school without study physics. So then I'm always the outstanding
Yeah.
physics person.
Yeah.
But that's good. That's good. I
I
guess
like that.
putting together to today, you feel like that doesn't, it's not abnormal, right? Because a lot of, particularly in US, I think a lot of people coming from the engineer background, and it's totally not strange. But I was very strange in medical school because then I so passionate about a lot of physics question, and I
Yeah.
interested on the engineering side and everything, probably all along. So yeah, so that's kind of like the
Love that.
prelude about your
Yeah.
question in the medical school. So I wasn't like the following being like if I didn't tell you this part, almost like, oh yeah, you having this rebelling heart, but you still follow the track. I wasn't, but I was somehow get myself into the medical school because of that. So that actually speak a lot about if later on we're going to chat about my career. So this whole close boundary about things and it's been happening probably start from the very beginning. Yeah.
Interesting. And I love like what your uncles pointed out of like look at how much op like there's basically so much discovery to be had. Like we have not figured out virtually anything. Like
Yeah.
in like in the biological context. There's so much new things that you can discover and you can make a massive impact, which is I mean to hear that when you were young, I think that's a massive inflection point. No one told me that. I wish someone told me that
Yeah.
when I was like embarking on it.
No, I think absolutely. When I look back now, particularly, and recently when I saw my uncle, I praised him. He's like, oh, there's nothing
He was like,
really.
no, it was like he was like, whatever.
Yeah, but yeah, that's interesting, right? It's not like,
Yeah.
yes, I told you
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's
He's
like,
like,
I think that's kind of giving him the extra credit because even his logic is right to the degree. He probably just randomly say this to this young niece, like, oh, I mean, what's the point? And
yeah,
he also have a profound understanding about what Einstein have done, right? So, like,
yeah.
I was chatting with him about all those things I feel like I'm so good at, like all those theory and everything. And then he's like, yeah, but that fundamentally, he say that's really shaking the whole physics, right? And then
Yeah.
fast forward from that day to today, probably then people go into maybe the astronomical or those things, and but not like a biology. This was the molecular biology just in infancy, and not to mention about now the sequencing, the human genome, and everything. So I give my uncle and look like you probably would like give him the extra credit. He sees through there are a lot of things, many things Albert Einstein has been making up, many physicists have broke. That is at stage. Biology is not quite there yet. Yeah, so I do think that was very, very helpful for me.
Yeah. It might have been a throwaway comment for him, but it's like it was like very astute. It was very astute of him. And it's interesting too because like I my father told me that like it was a similar experience. And I don't think he had the opportunity to branch out in his track. It was like you're just going to be an engineer. Like that was it. And he ended up becoming an engineer and went to grad school for engineering. Like it was like one straight line. Um, but it's like the timing seems to have been prescient where they like, they're like, actually, you can kind of do a cross-disciplinary studies, which is very cool. And something else too that's like, I think interesting is you're kind of how, I see it a lot in the United States, but like they're like, and I have friends who went through medical school who, studied music for like most, and then maybe did a little bit of biology and then got into medical school and started practicing. So I think it's like, and also I think the diversity in discipline, I think it's a net benefit. So everyone doesn't think 100% the same.
I think I like the way you highlighted very much because I think that's me also, and I always have this multidisciplinary thing, and I think that's a good thing. Like you say, in US, it's probably it's nothing strange, but it was extremely strange
Yeah.
as I grew up. If I if you and I were somehow run into one of my elementary classmate or even teacher, and they say, "Oh, Judy," I mean, and they will say, they would be very shocking. I wasn't an artist or a writer or a musician. So that's how people feel like that, and that's what you would be, because you're good at it, you are interested in it, and how could this even happen about you going to medical school and things like that? It's very abnormal, but I take that as a good thing for me, so I can see things. I echo the point you say. I really think the multidisciplinary is a key. Is where the innovation really coming from. And yeah, so
I absolutely agree. And I think
yeah,
sometimes, is it always surprising where you see how different disciplines kind of like overlap? You just never know, but you just like encounter it and you're like, what the heck? I saw that over there, but somehow it applies here in this domain. I don't know how, but it does. And then it comes
exactly,
out of
right? So
nowhere.
it's somehow in your brain, and it's kind of hard to quantify that even, I would say this. But just for fun to share with you, because I did have this when I first took on this big role at a Bayer, because later on we'll probably talk about this. And in my introduction, and we because it's a big role, so then everybody want to kind of you talk about all different stage, who you are. And it was probably the first time I kind of on the stage public talking to thousands of people about my artist background. So very interesting at the very, very end, the Q&A session, one of my employee actually raised a hand, asked me about um, what do you see the benefit of your artist training on the stage? Even today, I couldn't answer the question exactly, like quantified it, right? As you and I
Yeah.
just chat about this. So I say, well, I think that really helped me making PowerPoints.
Yeah, 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 yeah. The first thing that comes to mind, like, I make
Yeah,
a great slide deck.
yeah.
Like, yeah, it's killer. Like, no, no.
I don't know what else I would say. Still, if you ask me now, I would say, well, that my PowerPoint now, I mean, I do have people help me making PowerPoint, but if I would ever need to make a PowerPoint, and usually I impress my leadership team, like, hey, that looks really good. Who actually, which firm? And I say, well, that's my hobby, maybe.
Yeah, 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 exactly. I love that. I love that. And so now you're in medical school. But you are now, you mentioned kind of like a bit of an outsider because you had this physics background. How was the medical school experience?
It is actually, I think, set the whole foundation of my whole experience. I probably because that kind of like a research and a little bit physics and engineering background, I always curious about the lab. So I definitely spend some time. I would say it's so very naughty to talk about this, but like I and most of my summers and in the lab trying to understand a little bit more and read a lot of the story about the scientists, even though I was training to be a medical doctor.
Was
So
that like, how did you get into like, that's what that was the first question for me. I was just like, how did you just end up in the lab? Like, usually it's like, I would imagine those are like different tracks.
that's right. I think I only just myself sign myself up to I look at certain professors and I will be interested. So I start from in the lab, the pathology, and then later on cell culture, and I also learned my molecular biology. That's a little bit unusual. Me back to my days, and so just out of my curiosity, and really just
You're just
purely
knocking
because.
on doors. You're
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah. I
oh,
went to
sweet.
people talk about this. I say, well, I look like the electronic microscope is very interesting. I particularly highlight that because you can understand EM is so expensive, right? I
Yeah.
wouldn't have the undergraduate to touch that. And I say,
Yeah.
I can learn. I could be an apprentice. I would just shadow anybody. I don't touch it. I don't touch it, but I will try to learn that. So literally, that's what I did. So almost every summer, I sign myself up in one of the lab, even though I know I'm going to be a medical doctor. So, and that days, it's less about physician, or at least in Taiwan, it's less about physician, scientists concept. But I do think I have many professors, they are sort of doing that, like the physician scientists, out of probably genuine the curiosity. So I went to quite a bit of labs doing that. However, I think you asked me how the medical school. So medical school in Taiwan, particularly I was in National Taiwan University. This is a top-notch medical school. I would say a lot of, and also like you just highlight, you just run into many super talented people. This is a little bit interesting story there because Taiwan used to be governed by Japan. And so Japanese is a little bit worried about Taiwanese got too smart and then will be a problem. So Taiwanese are only allowed to get a higher education at that time, probably because Japan has the needs. So need to train a little bit more medical doctor. So the most creative discipline Taiwanese is allowed is in medicine. So you can be a medical doctor. So this has become a culture, I think, even today. You will see this super talented people went to medical school. Taiwanese see medical school very differently. This is not just, I mean, you can see fast forward to today, Taiwan is very well known for semiconductor and business. So no doubt, double ECS is very, I mean, like a good discipline. A lot of smart people want to go, but medical schools still have a very special place. That's very unique. So to my experience at that time, then not just the teacher, the professor, but also classmate, you do have a lot of very talented people. So, like in music, in art and everything. So that's a very enricing environment. I do have to say, overall, it was a very good experience to me. Maybe a little bit fast forward is then later on, then how come I would even bother go to take a PhD? That's probably much more unusual compared to others because almost 100% everybody become a medical doctor will be not just about you got a decent job, but your social status and everything is super good. I don't mean like people got satisfied about that, so they don't try to advance anything, but study PhD is a very unusual track because you will go into the clinical and then starting to practice right away. I didn't. So I got my degree and I immediately just went to PhD for a very profound reason, though. Yes.
Interesting. And you mentioned while in medical school, you're just like bumping into like super sharp people. Was there anyone specifically that like had a outsized impact on you or perhaps maybe even took you under their wing? Um, did you have that kind of experience?
I would highlight one professor. However, it was a totally in the opposite way.
Oh,
So uh, I think I can definitely even recently we got reconnect and really it was very interesting. I really think he has a huge influence and quote unquote to my life. This is a Professor Yao Chen. He was the first physician or the oncologist or hematology oncologist. That was the discipline I was in. I was trained to be a hematologist, so oncology in the hem-op discipline. Uh, he was the first one did the bone marrow transplantation successfully in Taiwan. This is back to really
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so I was thinking, oh, that's so cool, right? So I signed myself up on his team. And since I was really only the fourth year, yeah, that was the fourth year in medical school, he's just treat me almost like a intern and resident. He has that thing. And then we go to, do the bone marrow extraction from patient.
Oof.
I don't know, yeah, it's a horrible thing.
Ooh, horrible.
Because that is the thing you cannot anesthetize the patient. So it's, but anyhow, do the cell culture, trying to do this really fast forward today's autologous transplant and everything. So it was that advanced. This is back to almost like 30 plus years ago. So very profound about creative thinking and the way different from the treatment of just typical bone marrow transplantation. So the reason why I highlight him, and I say in the opposite way, because he's such a successful doctor, and then he also is the one like you will be a doctor because he praised me many, many, many things. Consider I have this whole, he said this insight or the sense about being a doctor, right? Because like I remember he always say like a good doctor is then when your patient walk in, you know what kind of medicine you need to prescribe already. You don't need to like take you too long, like that good sense. But why I say it's the opposite way, because he's so successful, so good, and he was like, because I have all those questions, you can imagine, not just about how to treat patient, as well as the fundamental, as I was in the lab and things like that. Try to find some way that connection, and then he allowed me to observe him or shadow him many, many, not just me, I mean, many of us like in the younger generation. So the more I observe, the more I kind of have this inside question. And now we talk about this way, right? I say, I always have this thing about on the surface, I can do whatever people expect me to do very well. And then inside of me, like, is this really the best thing you can possibly do? And that has been burning in my heart about, I see, again, you have to consider even in US for 30 plus years ago, not many solutions. So most of the cancer is just, that's the death sentence. So basically we just have to tell patient how to cope with this, the family to cope with this. And I really do not think for Judy, give up my dream being a physics, being the super creative person and being shake the ground, make a difference. And I'm there just to tell people their fate. So that is very hard for me to take. And then, but he's so successful, right?
Yeah.
So that's a problem. I feel like if one day I'm being successful, is that what I want to be? So that's why I say having this profound, extreme influence on me about, because if I'm just with a so-so doctor who I don't think is just too creative or too innovative, and that's probably one thing like, oh, I'll just be better than you are. But like I feel like if somebody I admire so much, and this is the best he can possibly do, I question is that what I really want to be? But really the heartbroken part was the one. I think that's probably the last bit about this, and allow me to share that story because this was a patient in this acute leukemia, and she's just about to die. And then again, Professor Chen has this nice thought about we need to collect some blood sample because those when you have to collect the blood when it's fresh, and then we can do the research someday to figure out something. I was the one always like a volunteer to do all those things to take those sample and see if any research we can do. I went to that. This was in the emergency room because she's just about to pass away. And I got there with my white robe on, right? So then next to this patient is her son, who's just about 9, 10 years old. And then she's already in coma. And we know there's nothing we can do to save her life back. And I was just there to withdraw some blood sample and hopefully one day we can make a difference. But broke my heart was then this young boy was trying to wake his mom up to be able to allow me to draw the blood because you probably know, I mean, when the patient is left in coma, it's extremely difficult to get this blood sample out of her. And this young boy was trying to tell woke his mom up saying, Mom, Mom, doctor is here trying to save you. Wake up. That was hard. I know I wasn't able to save her life. And then this young boy just with this hope, trying to wake his mom up. I did get the blood sample, and I always think about this. This was from the emergency room, walk back to the lab. That was the longest walk in my life.
Holy crap.
And I was thinking, and I still remember the patient's the case number. I just tried to remember the number, and I told myself, somebody need to figure out what is exactly in her blood, what is exactly the reason she will never wake up, and what is the reason I can truly fulfill this young boy's dream about save his mom, right? And I don't think it was continuing doing as a medical doctor and continuing have the limited tools I don't have. And that was the moment I say, this is it. I'm going to just finish the degree, as we just talked about. I am always be able to do whatever meets the expectation, get that box check, and then I'm going to move on. I have to do something else. Otherwise, I will have this very tough place to feel I can find peace of myself. And the reason why I say Professor Chen, to your original question, has this influence in me up to that day was negative, right? Because I almost like I don't want to be you. I want to be somebody else doing more. But like I say, recently we reconnect. I think if it wasn't him being so excellent and smart and everything, and push me, right? Because I was in clinics with him almost every day and study case almost every day and look at a sample almost every day to that extreme. I wouldn't realize that limit. I wouldn't realize something else I want to do. Um, yeah, so I think that was a very interesting experience because if I were being in an environment like today's medical school in US and maybe also in Taiwan, so creative and mixing everything, I wouldn't be so determined and so goal-oriented about this is the rest of my life I'm going to do. I'm going to make a difference. I want to bring back to the patient the solution, but not just treat one patient at a time.
That is what a formative moment. And thank you for sharing it. That's like, and also so brutal and tragic. Um, I can imagine, like, I can definitely imagine how it set you on a different path for sure. It's something you don't forget. And so now, you're like, all right, like, no, like, I'm going to dedicate myself to, to exactly what you said, finding a solution, and part of that being in the lab, and deciding to go get your PhD. So, how did you start conceptualizing that? Um, you're in a totally different environment in your medical school, and then you're like, okay, we're going to start anew. So, how tell us about that experience?
I really do like the way you ask question, right? Because then people say, then later on, how come you're not study oncology?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so I think that's kind of bring back this whole genuine curiosity. So I give a lot of credit to Yale. I really do think, and this is probably the first time publicly I would say this, among all my education, I really think Yale has that great, profound, positive impact in my life. I don't know, maybe it's also me hitting me, the time was right. I enjoy every second of all the education I have got at Yale. So first year getting into Yale, I don't know today if they still run that program. So basically biomedical um, field, the whole graduate school program, I think at the most maybe less than 100 graduate students.
Oh wow.
Then yeah, so even though you get into a different department, but we got cross similar to the undergrad at Yale. So you have this fundamental education you have to do. And that was also out of the first year. So maybe let me talk about the first year, then I'll say how I got into the discipline. So then I somehow, I don't know, everything just come together with me. I just feel like everything I learned, I just think, oh, this makes sense finally. Like
It's
everything
all
makes
clicking.
sense. Yeah, I think it's probably I give it Yale this credit, but I think that maybe also my time and everything is right. And so Yale has this requirement, I think even today, I think different department ask you for different class you must take, I mean, grade school. And then, however, you must get at least two honor. And what is the honor? I think probably Yale is not the only one because I don't know enough, but at least, so each graduate program or class, the professor can or cannot decide to give one student out of that class an honor like a grade. So the professor can be the whole class, and he or she doesn't think that's any student deserves that, or then they will name just one. So then before you finish the course requirement, you need to at least get two honors. So typically for students, that would take about 2 years. So, and take 6 or 8 courses, and somehow you become the one out of this 100. So imagine that. So you, that's how difficult and competitive. And somehow I say it clicked me well about, so, okay, you have to consider I was a foreign student, and it's the first time being in an environment about everybody's probably better than me speaking English and everything. So I feel like I need to work harder than anybody else. So I usually the first semester, all the student will take probably one or two, and not to mention we need to do teaching as a TA and being so that's changing and also rotation in the lab. So imagine jump out of medical school, getting to that environment, and that's probably something very, very challenging. But that Judy, for whatever reason, just feel like, oh, I need to work harder because I'm going to have to take like 20 courses to be able to get two honor because I am not that good. So I took five in the first semester. Yeah, I know. And most of my committee is saying like, no, that's a bad idea. But I say, no, I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to take five. I explain to them about the rationale I just told you. And then being a TA and do rotations, I was like really crazy. But but somehow, as I say, everything clicked to me. It really wasn't just about my grade, but about like I feel like oh, everything makes sense. Like
Yeah.
I really enjoy every single thing I learn, like absorb and everything. Like oh, how come I'm not in this environment a little bit earlier? And then out of the first semester, I got five honors.
Oh shit.
I know. Thank you for that expression. So then my committee is sitting there like, oh, we had never have anybody had that. And I wasn't overambitious. I'm telling you the background, not just being humble. I seriously not like I'm so good. I'm going to master it. I'm going to showcase this. So I was like at the point, basically. So Yale actually gave me. So I was very very honored. I got this special scholarship because they have someone donate about in the graduate school. So every year they can pick just one student to get this. So the extra credit and also extra funding in some sense. So they have to name me because among the all entire grade school, this is not just biomedical, like nobody the year, first year and the first semester got the five honor all achieved. So that was a little bit ridiculous, but I was like, okay, that's good. But second thing, also my committee was very reasonable. They basically say, what in a sense, to be a scientist, course taking is no longer a benefit for you you mastered right away. So they waive me. I don't need to take any course, and you should just go directly to research because you're ready. Like, oh, I didn't know that's a benefit. I don't think in my education system, the background, there's no such a thing about skipping grades. There's no such a thing about you just wait for something, right? So it was very, very helpful. But I want to highlight that that's one thing definitely I feel like I got it. But also second thing, as to your original question, and how do I shape myself about the course? But because of that, maybe it's a little bit being competitive or something.
Yeah,
And because
yeah.
there's the uh, okay, I usually deny that word, but then yeah, also have a program about the neuroscience at that time was in infancy. So the student in the biomedical discipline, you can apply and compete to be the second year you become focused in neuroscience. So neuroscience probably only have 4 or 5 students. So I feel like that is the hardest thing. And I am if I master this in one semester, I absolutely should study neuroscience. But also, I have to say, I admit that's 50%. So I wish I can brag about this 100% because I'm so interested in neuroscience. That's true. But I think it's another 50%. That's why I bothered to explain to you that honor I got. And I say, since I'm so good, and then, okay, and then maybe the other 50%, what is the question? Back to my uncle saying this, right? Like you have to solve that. I totally nowadays a lot of people use that sentence about the hardest thing should be using our brain to understand our brain, right? But that really was what I was thinking. Like, well, how can that be possible, right? So basically, that's an unsolvable question. Okay, I got to be there, and I have this way of thinking thing, even though where I'm coming from is from this oncology and terminal patient I need to treat. I always feel like when I move on to grad school, don't carry that. Don't carry that as a negative mark about, oh, because I couldn't do something, then I have to just do that. I don't want to pay my life as a debt about like, then there's something there and I have to just go address it, right? It's not like I made a mistake or something. So I feel like if I am now in a scientist track, being a good scientist, trying to really put the human knowledge foundation to the next frontier, and why not trying to solve the biggest problem, like then people won't be able to solve. So that's why I was not like abandon oncology. You'll probably see my career later on in industry. I kind of go back to oncology because that's still in my heart, and I still remain today reading almost most of the important oncology papers now, and still carry in the backbone of my. But I feel like for training, I'm going to be in neuroscience. So that's why then later on, then uh, even the second year, the lab and everything I choose is starting in neuroscience. This is probably odd enough. You and I spend so much time talk about neuroscience, but in my whole career, because I would use the word contribution in oncology, immunology, and I always shock people when people say, oh yeah, what did you study in grad school? I say, I'm in neuroscience. They were like, wow, seriously? And later on, let's save this question, why I didn't do neuroscience in my career, but definitely I was in neuroscience, and then I really have the luxury running into, I think many people later on become Nobel laureates, being in there in the midst. That was the luxury still in my academic life.
Wow, what an experience. And I think there's something to be said about also just like putting yourself in an environment that just like plays to your strengths and passions. Like when you're talking about like everything just like you're like, oh, I wish I was here earlier. So everything is clicking. It's like putting yourself in that right environment is important to succeed. Obviously, a little bit of competitive nature helps too, but like it helps. But putting yourself in the right environment is, I think is a big component of that. And so now you're doing research. Like talk about your lab experience. Whose lab were you in? Kind of what was your research like? What did you focus on? What was the lab culture like? Tell us about that.
I was in Professor Reinhard Young's lab, and I was in this really golden time, as I say, in neuroscience. My project all along are on synaptic vesicle proteins. And this was the time before snare complex, which is a profoundly shake the whole field about how the presynaptic vesicle get to the post synaptic and then conducting all the signaling. That was unknown when I first started the field. I'm not going to be over brag about this very, very controversial thing about because if believe or not, if people in this discipline, seriously, as how I got later on my Harvard job, and I can talk about that later. I was the first one get the first result about snare complex in
Oh,
my
crap.
first rotation because that lab notebook is still there. But somehow, because it's so unexpected. So the professor at the time, let me just not name the name, doesn't believe. I say, oh, this is a first year rotation student's result. Couldn't possibly be true. And later on, Jim Rossman at Rockefeller, I believe that's where he was. He's now currently at Yale. He published a paper by using a different method and bring down this snare complex, and he got a Nobel Prize out of that.
Whoa.
So
Whoa.
yeah, so I was
That's
that
crazy.
close. Uh,
Yeah, it's
and
crazy.
second project I was on, we did publish the paper, but it was later on. The second project I was on this whole rep protein on the TTPS protein. So basically, bit by bit, that's also contribute to the other Nobel Prize later on for Paul Greengard and Tom Shudoff and many in that field. Yeah, so it was always that close. This probably set my parents' expectation
Yeah,
about one day Judy should get the Nobel Prize.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
unfortunately that's an expectation as we talk about this family expectation.
Yeah.
That's probably where I would then say my parents have different expectation, but other times they're pretty liberal. But yeah, so it was great because that I was also always on this very competitive path in the neuroscience field and more about the cell biology side. So that set a very great foundation about the biochemistry and the cell biology approach and trying to break the codes in a sense. So very happy to be among about a lot of top-notch professors and in the field also. So looking back, this particular period of time, like I said, it's generate not just all those Nobel laureates are in the same one. So this is actually 3 Nobel Prizes just out of this field because of how important it is to change the field of thinking.
Wow. Talk about being, you talked about it being like the kind of golden age. Like that's
Yeah, it is. It
that's what
is.
it really truly feels like. You're just like, um, and was like how big was your lab? Was your professor or your PI like just do what you will? Or was it kind of a more kind of like regimented lab?
I think it's both. He has definitely the Howard Hughes grant, so it's a very uh, great funding lab. But since you particularly zoom into my lab, I do have a very unique and miserable past because seriously, because as exciting as this field and so competitive and then generating so many um, groundbreaking science, in the 3.5 year in my grad school, my professor moved out of Yale, so he left. He got a great
Mm.
position somewhere else. So it's like too early for me to graduate and too late for me to change the lab. So for the rest of 1.5 year, I was on my own.
Oh
Uh,
man.
seriously, yeah, and it was not pretty.
Yeah,
Initially,
yeah,
since you mentioned about this uniquely, I have to give you credit how big the lab. The lab was big. So I was he only took two graduate students, and then the other one is 3 years ahead of me. So you can imagine most of those postdocs and those everybody just want to prove I am the idiot of the lab, right? So then,
yeah.
so I would be competing to do the ultracentrifuge, competing every environment. So initial experience when the lab moved out was quite like this Home Alone movie, like when the
Yeah.
whole house is gone, right? It's like, yes,
Yeah.
party, I have the whole house. I was a party hard.
Yeah.
Seriously, I was like
Yeah.
set up 3 ultracentrifuge at the same time, run the column. It's like I have the whole lab. Yeah. Then I was running around the lab like, yeah, nobody's going to do you know this better or not? I was this, like the youngest kids, almost like that. I was really like this Home Alone movie, like,
Yeah.
every day. But that excitement doesn't last more than a week, right? So almost also like the movie, like, oh, seriously, I'm here by myself. Like
Yeah.
then it's really scary. And when are they going to take away this lab? And how long can this last? I think it still lasts probably like 3 months-ish. And then Howard Hughes have to take things like a distribute and the space need to be given to somebody else. So
Wow.
that luxury was gone. Then
Oh man.
now where to put Judy, right? So then, like I say, too early to graduate and too late to change a lab. So later on, I really do have a couple of professors. They just allow me to work in their lab. But interestingly, no, those successful professors, they also have a very jammed up lab. So I have this, one cart, and then I put most of the difficult math solution on the cart. So I was literally like a homeless, basically. So
Yeah.
I'll pour my card into that bench and work however long I can work on that bench. And really, a lot of very successful professors, I would name them now here, like Pietro Di Carmini, Spears, Trevellas. Later on, he's at Harvard, and also Ira Mellman. And so they just allow me to roll my into the lab and do my thing. And then, well, for substantials, I think the shortest in some of the period time will be a week. So I learned how to survive in such an environment. You can make it very profound, but at least one thing I'm very, very good at is packing. And
Yeah.
I remember one of the lab, I was packing up to go to another lab, but one of the graduate students, they're watching me packing. And then he actually asked me this question. He said, oh, no, this was the time I'm going to move on to my postdoc. And then he say, are you seriously? You're going to be a postdoc? And you know, those are the day postdoc pay almost like nothing. So he's like, I think you should work for a moving company.
No.
Like
Oh,
he was so good at it. Like you can
no.
pack up everything like so nice, taste and neat. I'm like, yeah, yeah. Luckily, I didn't take that advice, but really, it was postdoc pay is not comparable to even packing company.
Yeah.
That was those days. But anyhow, I think I learned how to survive being independent. Also, publish my paper, get my thesis out, and I I don't want to say my thesis advisor doesn't pay any attention, but he just got a new job too, so he has to pay a lot of attention to that, and I have to kind of independent doing all those things. I have to say, and later on, like I say, we'll talk about that's how I got my Harvard job. Because everybody in the field know such a student who were that close to two Nobel Prize data, and then she did have those data, which I mean was not like my research was late, but it's because my research didn't get published earlier, and then later on, managing to somehow get herself out of Yale and to be able to defend her thesis and get this. That's those independence experience and pave the way about people pay a lot of respect to me about, hey, she's not a typical postdoc or graduate student. She know how to get her thinking and things going, even though it was a very miserable environment, but she got her way out. So that's really, there's always silver lining about some miserable experience maybe at the end come.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think those are when you like you become stronger when you live through
That's
those
right.
experiences. Like as the saying goes, like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
That's right.
And then you carry with you those like kind of the scar tissue, but also like you build up this resilience that you kind of like can't get anywhere. You can't learn that in a book. Like
Yeah,
you just have to live
totally
it.
true.
You just have to
Yeah.
live it. And now, so you've kind of it was kind of seems like a roller coaster. It was like whoop,
Yeah.
whoop, and then you manage to get out. Now, yeah, and you said you pursued a postdoc. Talk a little bit about that and how you were conceptualizing that era and what was next for you.
Yeah, this is almost like at this point, as the way you describe, it sounds like I have this tendency to get myself into the most difficult. I really don't. I don't have a self-torture tendency at all. But I decided to sign up myself to go to Germany for one solid reason, and the other for the institute I picked was for some fun reason, connect back to my past. So the top reason is because I did mention about I was studying the synaptic vesicle, how the signal conduct in neuron. So at the time, in this Max Planck Institute in Göttingen, that's the only institute in the whole world have this separation resin technology. So that precious resin was developed in that institute. Why is that better? Because only using that resin, and you'll be able to purify the most purest synaptic vesicle. So then you'll be able to study that, get down to cellular level, molecular level to understand more. And so I feel like in my specialty or my research area, I got to be there. And not to mention, this is an institute also have another Nobel Prize laureate, Irvin Miller. He studied electron physiology, and he has also his special technology to understand the single ion channel. So I feel like I got to be in that place to kind of put those technology together to be able to have the next breakthrough. So that was the main reason. Definitely going to Göttingen is a little bit unexpected, and I'll save that. But second reason I like that institute, I have this part is a little bit fantasy part about maybe the artist of Judy can the institute, Max Planck Institute in biophysical biology was set up because there's a Nobel laureate, Manfred Eigen, and he got a Nobel Prize, I think it was in 1963 or something like that. And Germany honored him to build up this institute for a long time because I have this passion in music and piano playing, and so I know of him. Why? Because he's not just a Nobel laureate, he's very good at playing piano. So that people in the music field even know of him. So he's that good. And so when they build that institute, they have this special, I don't think many institute in biomedical field has this unique part about they build a concert hall for him.
Oh,
And then have the Steinway there for him to like periodically throw concerts because he's that good to the degree, like, like among many German musicians. I just check on his Wikipedia. Somehow they didn't mention. That's a pity because I heard it's really good. And I never get to hear his playing. But I have this weird dream about then maybe I get there, I got to play that piano.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Like, well, that's kind of fun with this top-notch institute, and also got to play Professor Eigen's piano. That would be a huge honor putting everything together. So this artist gene in me is still like clicking. So that's probably the two main reasons I was there. Yeah, so hopefully that answered your question.
Totally. And I think it's cool that you were able to kind of scratch two itches like at the same time. You're like this there goes this is a very unique research institute because they have this specific tool that can like enable me and unlock me, but also at the same time this other part of me like is scratching that itch too. So I love that. And how hopefully the postdoc experience was a little bit better than the tail end of your PhD. It was
It was. But the reason why I saved the comment about because Göttingen at the time, Göttingen's a very small town, even up to today. But I believe now it's no longer like the day when I was there, but it was during the time. It's so small to the degree. So in the institute, we speak English. And of course, if you run into certain people, you speak German. But in the town, anybody older than 50, I would say, couldn't speak English. They just have to use straight German. And it's such a small town, unless I have a car, I can drive to suburban area to get grocery. Otherwise, a grocery shop is like you go into, there's a person. You don't see grocery. The person will be in front of you. You have to tell the person what you need. And then this person go to the back to get your grocery.
Oh boy.
And then that time really like a bakery shop for that reason, because at least you can say that's
Yeah, yeah, you could point at it.
You don't
Yeah.
need to. So for survival, I have to be able to speak German fluently.
Oh
And then
man.
even the bus driver. So there's roughly some bus stop. But basically, you get onto a bus, you have to tell the bus driver where you're going to get off. For anyone, if you go to the Max Planck Institute in Göttingen, you know it's up in the mountain. So good luck, you get off the wrong stop.
Oh no.
You either have to walk really long downhill or very long uphill. Of course, I have a couple of trial and errors, and later on, then so it was. I think the challenge, which is good, as you just point out, right? So I'm become at least pretty good at German. So it's different from anybody tell you if they go to a German institute today, you can kind of get by having your life probably 90% in English, you are okay. And also, I mean, if you go to bigger city also, but in such an environment to survive, And definitely it's very, very different. I can tell you, I mean, even outside my lab, it's every day just a lot of cows coming back.
Yeah,
So it's
very
that
different.
kind of like a small environment. No, but I think I really learned a lot from my postdoc experience in Max Planck Institute, and a lot of top-notch scientists get to brainstorm with them and do my research as I want. Something I do want to highlight, that particular column, the CPG column, today, in our modern industry, doing the protein purification or antibody, that's a standard. So it later on becomes Sartorius and many company out license that, and that was the research tool, and now become something I will say I'm master about it, understand that resin. I have to kind of embarrassing mention about back up to the day when I have to managing people in purification department, and they wouldn't anticipate I know that, right? Because this is so disconnect. And then I was all of a sudden speaking about the column technology and everything like so well. They were like, wow. I
Like
do have someone
confused.
praise me. Yeah, yeah. Someone got the MIT bioengineering degree reporting to me and say, I have to tell you, you're the most engineering like boss I ever reported.
Yeah.
And I didn't. Now the person will know the secret today, because I never actually say, because I used to work on the whole CPG column. I know that
Yeah.
very well. But it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
a lot of things, right? Actually connected. Of course, at that time I didn't know. But yeah, overall, to your question, I think it's a positive. Like I say, other than the German has been a change, but later on become something. So today, don't test my German because I'm being rusted quite a bit.
Yeah.
But I have no problem understanding, which is scary to people because everybody living with a very stereotype life, and they usually don't anticipate or understand what they talk about. But I like, oh, this is scary. I actually know what they are talking about.
It
So
sounds
that's
like
good.
your postdoc was very multidisciplinary. You learned German. You were like you went there for like to scratch like your musical itch. And also you're learning about these columns.
Oh, and I did get
Like,
a chance to play in that concert hall because
oh, that's sweet. So you
I
actually did
told
it.
people that
Like,
story, and they say, we got to get Judy to that concert hall. And I say, okay, yeah, please fulfill my dream. So I did
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
have that.
you were doing a bunch of different stuff. That's really cool. And you know, but and as you're kind of like wrapping up your postdoc, when did you know it was time to leave?
I have the thinking about I don't want to be like others. So that's still probably up to today, right? Typically, like at Yale, I think it's still the case. The average graduate school take 8 years, and I managed to graduate 5 years. And then I say, well, for postdoc, I think still today, if you get stuck in postdocs for 4 or 5 years, and I told myself I don't want to spend that much time. I want to do having a real job. So I don't think it's so much about I know I'm ready to leave, but more about I know this opportunity. Harvard at that time posts about they want to have this. I'm glad you're keeping highlight about this, which is very interesting, very insightful. I'll give you that credit. They call this the multidisciplinary, like a professor. They call it research professor really. The will be 100% paid by Harvard, and then having the first, yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
don't
it's
need
like
to
from
even
going
write a
from
great,
no money to
yeah,
all the
and
money.
yeah, and then also for they would offer, I think that not like a guarantee for 3 years of research, but at least the first couple of years will be no grant needed. Harvard will fund your study. The reason why the cell biology have such a position because they want to see the intracellular trafficking and the cytoskeleton. This was a cell biology department led by Mark Kirshner, and he has this vision, not just himself, many professors, they want to see, hey, since the snare complex concept, this fusion and everything is so hot, they wanted, like I mentioned about this, one of the Nobel Prize area. So they want to see that interaction with the cytokine. And I saw that. I think, well, I think I'm going to be good at that. So I apply. Of course, I know I only have done 1 year postdoc, not like other competitor. So I think to my I guess I will call that luck. And then I got that position. But to make sure I answer your question, so I think it's less about I am ready to leave and I think I published enough paper or something like that. But it's more about I always feel like I don't want to take too long to do the training. I'm ready to go. And particularly I have a little bit longer background compared to others in the medical school, right? So I like to be able to jump to that. Then it's really the luck about I got that job, which I know, I mean, a lot of people, seriously, I would say, have publication better than I do and have the years of experience longer than I do. And I got that position. I said, well, of course, then move on and move to Harvard. So I moved back to US in a sense. I have to say at that time also to my luxury, not because I got that position, the Max Planck Institute, as you probably know, Germany has a different system. So this is called habitat system, right? So you go into the assistant professor in the habitat like under. So I was offered that already. That's probably got me motivated about since I'm ready, may as well consider other opportunities to see if I supposed to take that one or I should apply to other position. So that's how I move on.
Very interesting. And so now you're on the faculty at Harvard, like, and you're no longer in training. So
Yes, yeah.
what was that like for you, that transition and just like that era?
I really have the very fortunate situation, right? Because less than ending, like even up to today, I think it's the same. The assistant professor, you kind of fighting hard about the grant and to be on the tenure track or not, and things like that. I got that position, wasn't on tenure track, but it's funded by the university. So the best interest of the department is to make this successful because I'm creating a new discipline, creating of a cross-discipline and new things for the cell biology. Cell biology at that time is very well known for cytoskeleton and motor protein, but less about the intracellular trafficking and things like that. It does have the top professor like Tom Rappaport, but it's not so much that's a thing. So I have to say was good, and I would just need to work hard on trying to figure out what kind of research I need to do, and then to create the vision, right? To fulfill that vision in some sense. So probably it's a little bit different from most first year faculty. I do have huge sympathy on that, and I don't want to say, oh, I mastered that, but I think I do have an environment. People want me to be successful, and I do not need to write a grant. And of course, then you'll probably ask me those big equipment. So I kind of associate with Tom's lab, and then I can use most of his equipment, and then join his lab meeting and things like that. So I have my little one bay size lab, and like a U shape, and then have one assistant working with me, and the other kind of like the undergrad come to the lab, and but it was really good.
You're doing a little startup almost. You're
That's
within Harvard.
interesting.
You're like a little
That's
bit,
yeah, that's an interesting way you
or
put
maybe
it.
like it was almost like a entrepreneurial kind of where they're like, we'll back you. Just like, kind of like within a big company, it's like, we'll back you, figure it out though. Like,
I think that's connected to what we just chatted about a moment ago, right? Because I think looking back, the reason why they picked me, they literally actually even told me about, because most of the people know my miserable past about being being the student that close to the top-notch research, and because your professor didn't quite believe that's the case, and then also have to independently figure your way out, publish all those papers people still read today. And so they say that independency you have demonstrate is way better than a postdoc publish like a five paper, and we know this person is under a very well-known professor about guiding everything through. So that's the thing. They feel like that independence thing. So like you say, actually, I never thought about that way, but I appreciate you point that out. So I have to create that discipline, and then,
from scratch.
yeah, yeah. This is
It's like
some maybe the venture is trying to to support me in a way, right? So that was the spirit, and I have to give maybe Mark Kirshner that credit because that's the vision he wanted to create.
as you were going through this, and I know kind of the next phase for you was going into industry. What catalyzed that for you? like
That's
going like from academia and taking the leap.
given we just chat up to this point, there's no motivation for me to leave my position, right? And that's totally true. I think if it's the ending thing, it's where I came from. It's that dying mother, is that crying boy, right? So that is something I ask myself. I feel I have this luxury. I'm going to dive into this great knowledge I always want to explore, and then maybe one day become a I was at Harvard also. I mean, even if I'm not get down to the tenure track there, I'm going somewhere.
Yeah.
So this become a question about, hey, you are somewhere you no longer were, right? And like I say, I don't have problem about move on rather than keeping looking back. But I think where I came from, and this is up to today, is still very profoundly in me. What takes that physics Judy out of
Yeah.
that track to medical school, and what take medical school Judy out of that being a well recognized social status and go to the nobody won't care about the PhD. It was that fundamental question about study that test tube was on my hand. Was that longest walk about I do not want to be what everybody want me to be. And that's where I have that question like, yeah, you can say I move on because I have a good career track, but am I there to answer that question? And I don't know how to connect that back, really. So that question is in my heart. But so this was the time I think was maybe start from some postdoc, maybe start from some graduate student. And I couldn't quite track. So if someone listened to this podcast to figure out that's probably today's, I saw Harvard still have that called Biotech Club. And so they form a club. I saw this poster somewhere. And I was asking like out of curiosity, because the biotech thing really attracted me. As I say, I have this tech inch always there. And like, well, I'm in biology, and what do they do in the biotech? And so I stopped by for those seminars. So whoever organized that at that time, and you can tell I never formally joined the club. So I was like, stop by, and they usually invite, this was biotech in the infancy. So it was not a thing, I would say. Like, I don't think anybody, so nowadays, I would say I'm very, very happy to hear people from the graduate track on PhD. They have this option and also thinking about industry or academia. In my days, I know I'll say this, hopefully not put down a lot of people, but I think really only if you don't get an academic life job, then okay, just go to whatever,
Yeah,
find
the
a
dark
job.
side.
That's the dark side, and
Yeah, that's the dark side.
I will elaborate even more. But that wasn't the thing I'm thinking about to go to industry. I just but they still do managing invite some of the industry leaders when they're to give talking about what they were working on. So I was curious, and I periodically then just stop by, listen to that. Like, oh, I don't think I completely understand what they were doing, and to be frank, and I wasn't so serious as I said, I never really joined the club. So because I didn't join the club, so I never really know their agenda. And there's one day I stopped by, anticipate I'll listen to a seminar or something, and then they have a job fair. So then there's kind of like instead of the room will be like a putting up, you listen to a seminar, become like all these booths, and then different company were there, like around in the Boston area. So I was like, oh, what's this? So I was like strolling down, and then I ran into someone, and they said, hey, it's just I mean, oh, so are you a postdoc or grad student? And I introduced myself like, oh, okay. So then the person asked me what I do. And I mean, just to be friendly, right? So I did talk, and then I asked this person, thinks she's so friendly. So I asked her, what does she do? I don't remember what she said. I'm pretty sure close to 110%. I don't know what she's talking about. So like, okay. And then she said, well, how about you come to my company to give a seminar? I said, okay, that sounds reasonable. Okay, I'm going to date it myself now because this was the old day. There's no such a thing about PowerPoint you can just project. So we generate cassette, and maybe to you. So the slide, we have to make slide ourselves. And So I feel good about if I spend so much time, I have to develop the slide myself. This is not even the transparency, the projecting. So why not just have the best use of that? Seriously, it was kind of like a recycle concept. But I say, okay, why not? Because the slide already made. So giving a talk is not, and plus I got to learn about what this biotech company is doing. Not to make you curious, the name of the company is called BASF, Bio Research Center. And I'll kind of talk about the story. But anyway, I went give a talk, just doing my typical thing. So end of it, and then this person, and she's like, hey, did you notice like in the audience and in the auditorium, and then the very back, the right side corner, there's a guy sitting through your whole talk. I say, oh, of course I didn't notice. That is our VP of this whole site. Oh, okay. Like, we have this position.
Yeah.
And we have interviewed 13 top candidate. He killed every single one of them. And then for all of them, only a couple of them, he sat through their presentation and he will left even just before the talk finished. But your talk, you were not even interviewed. He sat through your talk. That's amazing. He hardly did this to any scientist in this whole company. Do you mind, like, then I'll just introduce you to meet him? And I say, oh, VP just sound pretty cool. So I say, yeah, I mean, I'm going to meet the VP. And I can probably tell, even I agree, and they are like very nervous. And of course, then I went to see this VP, and I can tell he's probably, and you have to understand, I have no preparation going to industry and no idea how industry jobs should be. So then he has me sit down, then he asked me a bunch of questions. He did flip through my resume, like, and then like say, well, it looks like you have a really bright, beautiful future in academia. I say, yes. He say, are you interested in industry? I even say, no.
No,
Yeah.
actually.
And then he said, okay, let's talk. And then the problem is he asked me just a typical industry interview question. And he's like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I was like, I didn't even know that's an industry typical question, but I was thinking 5 years. Oh, I started kind of talking about my ambition about the research, we'll do this and that. That was okay. And then he starts saying, so where do you see yourself in 10 years? I was thinking, oh my God, so is this an interview? Is
Yeah.
this, I mean, and then I don't even know what you guys doing. And then 10 years, I couldn't even make up anything. You have to understand, I am a person very hard to make up something if I don't even have answer. So this is good or bad. I acknowledge that's my weakness and maybe a strength too. So I couldn't. Even like I was telling myself, say something, and I just couldn't. So I was like, I'm sure I'm probably my face probably turned red, and it was like I just couldn't lie about. I don't even know what I should say. So I tried to look around and in the whole his office and just hope this question just go away, right? So then as I like look around, he still just like look at me, like waiting for that answer, like a very passionately. And I was like, oh my God. Then I look at it when we kind of eye to eye, and I was just almost like help me out of here. So I kind of the thing come out of the mouth, right? He said, where do you see yourself in 10 years? It was, oh, you have a very nice office. Then he was shocked. His eyes like open. He said, I asked you, where do you see yourself in 10 years? I was like, oh, darn it. Because I say, you have a very nice office.
Oops.
And then I go, whoops. But I cannot take that back. And I'm like, and I just smile. And then he smiled back. And then he moved on to ask me other things.
Yeah.
But later on, what I know is then he told everybody, I like ambitious people. Like, I really like ambitious people. This person has no idea already project herself in 10 years she's going to be a VP. So we should take her, we should give her a position. So second day they call me, seriously, it was a true story. And they call me to say, what do you think about working with us? I say, oh, I have no idea what you guys work on. Like, well, please just take it because this VP killed every single qualified candidate. And he really like you. He think you are ambitious And I was like, where's the ambitious coming from? The ambitious part, now I explain the story to you, was only later on when I'm on board, they told me about, did you answer that question that way? And then definitely the department head later on say, she's going to highlight that's the best interview answer
Yeah, yeah,
anybody
yeah,
ever.
yeah. You're just like, I don't know what to say right now, but this is a really nice office.
Yeah.
I love that.
I will tell you, embarrassing, this story going on in the biotech field for really quite a while, even up to my Genentech time. When people first met me, they will always ask me about, what do you think about my office? It's like
Yeah.
words get out about, because it was a small biotech world, and
Yeah, yeah,
people
yeah.
say, well, Judy Chow, like
It's
when he
so
interviewed,
funny.
it was so funny. And I always have to comment about making comment about people's office, like so, like, oh, do you like my office? It was particularly intimidating when Abbott acquires. So that's how BASF become Abbott. That's why my first job is AbbVie, because later on become AbbVie. I was the first person sent to Abbott Park to give a talk about Humira, and then every single people ask me, so I know of you, your background, in a very intimidating way, like I am intimidating him, or most of it him, and it'll be like, do you like my office? Like, no, 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 don't
No,
worry,
no.
don't
Yeah,
worry.
yeah, 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 yeah. That's so funny.
It's
It
very
just been
funny.
it just been coined now. Like it just like yeah. I love that. And
Yeah, even now I run into AbbVie people, and they will ask me sometime, because that's word still, some of the older AbbVie people will say this, and they say they would name particular person who has an office like, facing the lake, and they say, well, did the person got intimidated because he really liked his lake facing office? I say, yeah, that one. I actually particularly say, no, 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 those is a very nice office, but please don't get me wrong, like I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
have the. But it was really funny. Like my office thing become a thing. Even my team make fun of me now too.
You'll never live it down. You'll never live it down.
Seriously, yeah. My current company just moved November 1st, and I wasn't there because I was on business trip. And then the person moved this say, make well, don't worry, we have the office
Yeah, yeah.
pause. You will really like.
Cause,
Thank you.
like, God damn it.
Yeah,
God damn it. God damn it.
yeah, exactly.
But so it
But the
sounds like
point is,
you
it's
took the
really,
job though. It sounds
yeah,
like you took the job.
that's a good point, because then I could have just laughed about this, but the thing made me make the decisions. What you and I just chat about this, like then I was like, oh, will this be that piece to close that circle? That piece I don't know where to come, and then I almost feel like I stayed at Harvard. I would go to draw another circle, not this one anymore. I go, will that be, because it seems like they are developing some new medicine. So this was where Humira was working on in phase 3, and I have no idea, because I'm embarrassing, I'll say, because some people interested in biotech at my time should know something, but I did not. I was so focused on my neuroscience research, and so I was like, antibody can be a therapy. That's a new thing to me, seriously. At that time, also, the two antibody drug only got approved is Rituxan and Herceptin. So nobody else other than Genentech can get anything approved, right? So I have to think about, but I feel like, oh, well, if they are working on something they think can be the third or maybe one of those uh, new therapy tool, keep in mind that tool thing kicked me, right? Like, well, that's probably where what I was seeking for so many years. Maybe this is a part I should not have the ego about, like, the now neuroscience, bye bye, those patients, I don't care anymore. I feel I need to kind of stick to that passion, and then that can take me a long way, right? Not just the position, not just the glorious things people dream about. So I think that quick decision was made, was that. And some people ask me this question, is that decision harder or the one left medical school? And I think even that day when I was at that moment, left medical school was harder. Like left the heart thinking about I can put the science, innovation, helping patient together, and crash that dream to say, well, I have to find other way was harder. So now if I got an opportunity to put the three things together again, I mean, the science, the innovation, and the helping patient, okay, why not give it a shot? I mean, as fun as we can chat about the office and everything, at the end was that. So that was quick. It was a couple of days to say, okay, take that. I think I have this thing, I believe this was a thorough, he say like, so instead of going to the path that's already defined, right, it kind of like go on to something people haven't break that ground and make a trail. And that was kind of clicked me about I absolutely should do that to make a difference. And maybe that's where truly close that circle. Then I'll feel better rather than just go on another circle of doing something else. And that's how then I move on to go to industry. Yeah. So
What a, I guess, important seminar you gave. Like an important seminar you gave just like on a whim. Yeah, yeah, sure. All right. And so now you're in industry. How was that experience? Like now you're in a completely different environment, like at AbbVie or soon, well, eventually AbbVie.
first when I joined industry, even though they gave me the senior scientist position and I even starting leading a group, I have no doubt I was the most silly, stupid idiot in the whole company. Seriously, because I have no idea what they're working on. I have no idea about everything. Um, and I think my skill set, like in mass spec and purification protein. I think particularly the biochemistry and cell biology make a long way about going to some of the strategic meeting discussion, no problem. But getting to exactly what I need to do in the lab, I have huge issue. So I really, I have to acknowledge this, and hopefully for anybody listen to this podcast will get some inspiration. So I can, I have kind of like two choices, right? One, just being a big boss, ask people to do work, and so be it. I don't know how to do those lab work because they already gave me a team. Um, Second pass, I give up, right? To say this is not what I want to do. Um, so I chose, I will do the third pass. I'm going to just be the idiot to expose and just to put my glorious about Harvard professor role aside, humbly learn from the people. Because I do have people on my team already have 12 years in the industry, 13 in the industry. They are research associate indeed, but they are good. They know something I don't. So I have to be humbly just to learn that. Taking HPLC, for example, in my academic life, I press button, run HPLC. I know how to operate. I know um, how to use that technology, use different column and all those things. But I don't know how to do this plumbing. I have to say, like you go taking them apart and doing all those things. And then I was also, I think this is something most of my friends think that's just crazy. Because I haven't heard anybody else done this as I did. So most of the people from academia go to industry, you go to exactly the same discipline you are very, very familiar with.
Yeah.
I was in neuroscience. I was, okay, then you say if it's not neuroscience, you're supposed to go to cell biology, biochemistry. I was not. I was in the analytical chemistry lab to do in the development side. So close to manufacturing. I have the honest to admit, the first time when my first week, they gave me a tour and showing the purification column is like that big, right? I
Yeah.
have this tiny, very cute and nice column in my lab. I was like, that's it's not possible. No, you guys, are you sure this can be done, like purify as good as? So many things to me is new. So I was on the development side, not even on the research side. So that's so extreme. Most of the people are, engineers and all this, um, and many things. Like I say, the plumbing thing, I don't understand how to taking HPLC apart, taking mass spec apart, trying to create a tool. So even the mass spec HPLC applied for protein analysis was pretty much in the very initial stage, right? So you got to be good at that. Otherwise, you just stay on the strategic level, the experimental design, but not so much down to the earth. So I give all those team member credit about, I'm so sure they were like, who got this idiot? So, but, and since I'm probably humble and I would just say I'm learning, I acknowledge what I did not know. I wish I can tell you like, oh, I'm so good because I did this, everybody understand. I have to tell you, it's very painful though. Because I built my confidence to a degree from Yale to Max Planck to Harvard. I think I was good, but I have to tell myself I was really the most ignorant person in the whole institute, have to learn from scratch. Was hard. It took me a year, like just have the mindset about whatever. And also, as I share with you, I am a person when I did that, and I feel that was a profound decision, right? I was thinking about where I came from. That was where the roots, where I was built up. If I took that seriously, I cannot say, oh, I want to find an easy path. Let me just go back to my cozy ivory tower and do that. So I don't give myself that excuse. Plus, I give up something a lot of people envious about. And I don't want to just clone myself. No, I'm going to be here just doing whatever I used to do at Harvard. No, I think so. Really, these two things was very important. One is, as I mentioned, about being humble, learn from scratch, whatever I don't know, acknowledge I don't know. But second thing also, I told myself, okay, I think in industry, the most important thing is the common goal of that that institute, right? That company, less about myself in research interest. If I want to do that, Judy, go back to academia because you have the option. So I don't allow myself there just trying to do my thing. I will be very pay a lot of attention about what is the most important question, and then can I be the one be helpful? So I think probably because it's too mindset, like just learn whatever need to be done, and also then kind of really stick to the common goal of the company. That made me immediately will be on this whole Humira team was on in phase 3. Probably not be able to get into the detail because that's very confidential about what exactly the breakthrough I have done to get me to honorable being the co-author and also being highlighted by not just vice president, but president level about, hey, she's really making a huge difference to be able to launch this drug. But really, I think thinking back is these two things allow me to start with that. But also, I do give you credit about appreciate this multidiscipline thing because that's that creative thinking about most of people have been working on that for a while, right? And didn't see that breakthrough. How do we answer that question? Basically, is a little bit, I think nowadays, a lot of people, you can see Humira become so successful for good reason. It has really the highest affinity and great half-life. And I don't think my AbbVie colleague will kill me. Frank speaking, when we get into phase 3, we don't even know why this molecule is so good. It's just the clinical result is good. You have to keep in mind, Enbrel is already out there, very successful. Remicade is already there, very successful. And yes, BASF or later on Abbott Bioresearch Center trying to see if we can overcome that. But humbly, we always start from market share only, not like it will be exceed. But when we launch that BLA, we actually highlight the things which I directly contribute to figure out why this molecule is so good. I cannot say just myself because it's always teamwork, but I do think my contribution, looking at different angle, the biggest honor, I would say, I mean, less about launch the drug and things like that, is this research associate who reported to me, and I was really worried about. He has the experience 12 or 13 years, and he changed job just because his prior job made him report to somebody really know nothing.
Oh no.
So now he faced me, right? I was like, and I learned so much from him, and I do think like I give myself 1 year mark. So the 1 year, that's one of the discussion in that meeting. And then he just openly talk about like, Judy, I have to say, if this team doesn't have you, we'll never see things this way. And then you really bring a lot to the table. That is the honor to me, because I think for somebody know that discipline way better than I do, give me that credit about what I contribute. I mean, it's a research associate, but I feel like that's what I really want to earn. Yeah, I think that's something a little bit different. I see a lot of people today still struggle like you, just trying to stay in your comfort zone. Like I say, I don't want to say I'm always picking something so difficult to prove myself, but I do think stay with my passion, that course, right? Because I think, okay, if this is what it takes for me to understand biotech, for me to understand I can create the great medicines to answer the question that younger Judy couldn't address, go do it. Just don't make your ego get ahead of you. Don't make those proud nonsense proud or some of the preset goal there, and just stick to it. So that's where then I feel that profoundly help my career later on also.
I was going to say that like there's like a bunch of different directions like I can go and want to go, but the first thing is like one of the kind of like I guess lesson or kind of like through line is, you know, you talked about like being like not being like too kind of like precious about rolling up your sleeves, because that's kind of what you did. You're like, I'm just gonna learn, like even if it means doing the plumbing, like
yeah, and it's hard.
yeah, it's hard, but like you like if you don't know how to do the plumbing, you're gonna have problems. Like
Exactly.
you will
Yeah.
have problems, and I like your observation where if you don't know how to do that stuff, it's really hard to manage.
Yeah.
Like you're like you don't really know what you're managing. You're like, and I think it's kind of a I always like I can't I was having another conversation with someone where this kind of like it brought to my memory. It was just like how Jeff Bezos in the early days of Amazon would take customer support calls and just really go firsthand, just like learn what it takes to, you know, to handle that. And that is like it's kind of a similar vein. You're just like you came from a, you know, a very kind of position that's coveted, but like the willingness to jump in and get your hands dirty and figure it out and learn, I think is something that anyone who's kind of in a similar position and in a new environment can take away. And then also, I think just thinking about this environment, it's kind of like when you bring in kind of like fresh eyes from a different, like that's why I think like diversity in hiring and just how you in thinking is so critically important, because like you can become so singular in your focus that you just lose sight of like what the possibilities are. And, you know, I think it's your diversity and experience and bringing that in is kind of like a breath of fresh air. And the third point is just like, what a amazing first industry job, like to basically like have one like basically kind of participate and contribute to one of the most successful like drug launches and continues to be ever. It's just like you're like, yeah, I'm gonna do a seminar. Oh, like holy crap. Like we're now like, you know, you kind of it's the talk about just like the stars kind of just like aligning and just like setting yourself up in a kind of an awesome position.
That's all for this episode of the Biotech Startups podcast featuring Judy Chou. Join us next time for part 2, where Dr. Chou recounts her postdoctoral work at the Max Planck Institute in Germany, mastering CPG column technology that would later define industry standards, and her transition from Harvard faculty to industry at Abbott Bioresearch Center working on Humira. She also shares how she pioneered high-throughput screening for biologics at Wyeth, earning the nickname High Throughput Lady, while others thought she was crazy, and how Genentech recruited her to build a revolutionary product-driven department in Oceanside. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe, leave a review, or share it with a friend. Thanks for listening and see you next time. The Biotech Startups podcast is produced by Exceeder. Don't want to miss an episode? Search for the Biotech Startups podcast wherever you get your podcasts and click subscribe. Exceeder provides research labs with equipment leases on founder-friendly terms to support paths to exceptional outcomes. To learn more, visit our website www.exceeder.com. On behalf of the team here at Exceeder, thanks for listening. The Biotech Startups podcast provides general insights into the life science sector through the experiences of its guests. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from the podcast is at the user's own risk. The views expressed by the participants are their own and are not the views of Exceeder or sponsors. No reference to any product, service, or company in the podcast is an endorsement by Exceeder or its guests.